things in your life, like you're going through your day, you see things, and do you ever get that feeling just like, man, that's not right, that's not fair, like why is that person being treated that way, or why is that person able to get away with that, but this other person isn't? Like, we all experience things in our everyday lives that just seem unfair, right? And then other times, it feels like things are made right. Like, there's always that like, getting what they deserve kind of thing. So, okay, you're in science class, right? You've got a group project, you do, like, most of the work. You do a bunch of the work on this project, like, the project is really good, you get an A, right? But then there's somebody in your group that they're just a lot more outgoing, and the teacher, like, she gets your whole group up in front of the class, and she's like, man, that person did a really good job, but like, you did most of the work, right? That's it. I mean, does that seem fair? Like, this other person got most of the credit. I mean, you all got an A, so I guess it doesn't matter, right? But they got most of the credit. Or your parents, like, they get on you to clean your room, right? They get on you a bunch of times, and you get grounded, but like, your little brother, his room's always a mess, and they never say anything to him. Or, okay, so you're on the soccer team, right? You're on the soccer team, you make just a powerful drive up the field, you get all the way to the goal, you kick it over to an open teammate, they kick it in, they score the goal, they end up getting MVP of the game. Like, does that sound fair? Like, they got MVP of the game because they scored that goal, but you did that whole drive through all the defenses, and they just have to be in the right place at the right time. We all experience things in our everyday lives that seem unfair, and it's usually pretty obvious when a situation is made right. You feel like all is good, but that heavy feeling you get in your stomach when you know something isn't fair, that's injustice. Injustice is anything like it's wrong or unfair, or things just seem unequal, right? And it's the opposite to justice, in which what happens when things are made right. Now, those are pretty big ideas, and you're probably sitting here thinking, like, why should I care about injustice in middle school? Like, adults deal with that, right? It's something that you don't have to worry about, right? Well, okay, so when I was in middle school, I think a lot of my guys know this, I moved from Southport to Whiteland in middle school, and I don't know how many of you can relate with being like the new guy, but generally speaking, it's not fun. Being the new kid, it's like this social construct or this social contract that everyone but you has signed, that you are now open, like you are now an open target. Everybody is allowed to make fun of you because you're the new kid. And that's just how things are. And that stunk. That was not fun. But luckily, about 2 months later, another kid moved into town, so now we were allowed to make fun of them. Okay, that you guys are supposed to be like, no, that's not right. Like, that's not how that's supposed to work. I should have learned my lesson and been like, no, I'm gonna make friends with the new kid. I did make fun of him for a while, but now we are best friends. Kid beat up my brother, so I chased after him, and then his best friend tried to beat me up, and now we've been friends for 25 years, and I think my brother still owes him $25. So it worked out in the end, but it still wasn't right. Like, just because he was nerdy and he was new, like, we shouldn't have been making fun of him. So there is a reason that in middle school you guys should notice this kind of stuff, right? Like, it happens even in middle school, even in elementary school. Like, the unfairness, the injustice, that stuff did happen. Now, how many of you actually like when things are unfair? Nobody does, right? Like, we like justice because we want things to be fair, especially ourselves. It's easy to speak up or recognize the way injustice is wrong when it directly impacts us. And some of us have experienced quite a few injustices in our lives, while others may have experienced very few. It can sometimes be hard to think about what it's like for other people to go through things that we just haven't had the experience with. Like, it's easy for me to notice when other people are getting made fun of because they're new or because they're nerdy or just for whatever reason, because that was me in middle school. Like, I understand what it's like from that side. I also understand what it's like from the other side, which is still not a good thing to be. Like, don't be a bully. Like, it's not healthy, it's not fun, and people don't like you. Like, don't be a bully. So, injustice happens all around us, right? It's easy to be like, yeah, it happens all the time. It's in the news, it's in our schools, it's in our houses. Injustice happens all the time. Even when you see and recognize the injustice that's happening in your school or your community or across the world, it's hard to know what to do about it. And that's not a new concept, that's not unique to you guys. Like, people, they see this, but they don't know what to do. And there's a couple of really good reasons why they don't. Like, when you see an injustice, maybe you hesitate because you feel powerless. It's like, what can I do about world hunger when I'm in middle school sitting in math class? Like, that's, the problem is too big for just me to solve. Like, I can't solve that problem, so I'm powerless, so I'm not going to do anything. And then sometimes we avoid speaking out about injustice because it feels risky. You worry that people will think it's silly to try, and, I mean, you're just a middle schooler, what are you going to do? Or you don't want the attention turned to you. Like, that's the big one. Like, you see a bully, you see a hungry kid, you see something that you know isn't right, but you don't want to do anything because then everyone will be looking at you. It's like, you don't want the big, like, linebacker looking fifth grader to turn on you, right? Nobody wants that. Like, you don't want to be the new target. Or maybe you just avoid doing something because it just feels awkward. You want to do something, but we don't know how. It just feels awkward to try when we're not even sure how to start. And I know there's a lot of really good reasons that keep us frozen in that moment. But I think there's one reason, and it's a pretty big reason. It's bigger than all of that can inspire us to make that move, to discover what that is. And we're going to look in the book of Mark at Jesus' own words to kind of give us an idea here, okay? So the book of Mark, as I feel like you guys are pretty aware, it's one of the four Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, and those are the books that talk about Jesus' life on earth, right? This is when Jesus was down, walking as a man, walking on earth, doing his thing, his actual ministry, the 3 years he spent just walking around, preaching and teaching people and healing people. And these are pretty powerful stories because this is, it's real life. These aren't Bible people, these are people. These are stories, and this is history. This isn't just like Romeo and Juliet or Jack and the Beanstalk. These aren't the fairy tales. These are actual stories, like actual events that were happening to actual people. And it's kind of cool to kind of take a step back and realize that. Like, really think about it and wrap your mind around the fact that this is real stuff that was actually happening, right? So, as this starts, Jesus is walking. He's walking down a road, and there's a massive crowd of people, and he's pretty used to this. There's a massive crowd of people following him around because they've already seen some of the things he can do and the stuff he teaches, and so there's just all these people around him, right? And he's pretty used to it. And all these people are begging for help, But there's this one guy kind of standing off to the side of the road. His name is Bartimaeus, but we're going to call him Blind Bart, okay? Because one, I love alliteration. He was also a beggar, so he was Blind Bart the beggar, okay? I love alliteration, and that becomes important in just a little bit, okay? So we're going to call him Blind Bart because I can't pronounce Bartimaeus that many times in a row. So when Bartimaeus heard Jesus walk by, he cries out to him. And with the crowd being so big, it'd be really easy for Jesus to be like, nah, like, I got all these people around me. I'm not going to worry about this guy over on the side of the road yelling for me. Like, he can come to me, right? But that's not how Jesus is. So it starts, okay? So when he had heard that it was Jesus of Nazareth, he began to shout, "Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me." And many rebuked him and told him to be quiet. But he shouted all the more, "Son of David, have mercy on me." And Jesus stopped. And he says, "Call him." So they called to the blind man, "Cheer up, on your feet, he's calling you." And throwing his cloak aside, he jumped to his feet and he came to Jesus. "What do you want me to do for you?" Jesus asks him. The blind man says, "Rabbi, I want to see." So Jesus, he says, "Go, your faith has healed you." And immediately he received his sight and followed Jesus along the road. So think about this for a second. Like, Jesus, he's walking with all these people. He's like getting all this stuff done. He knows what he's doing. And he's got all these people, but he stops to help this one guy who obviously we can't call Blind Bart anymore. And we can't really call him a beggar because Jesus has already given him everything he needs. So it's just Bart now. Like, this is just Bart, and he's just Bart. Jesus stopped and helped the one. Jesus saw people's needs all the time. But he didn't just stop at seeing. He acted. He did what he could to help. And on this day, Jesus saw one need that he knew he could meet right then and there. And that's all it took. Jesus knew, you know what? There's this one guy. He's got this very specific need, and I have the power to help that. So I'm going to do that. How does this apply to our lives? Right? Well, one of the most common reasons we don't help people is because we don't notice them or their needs. So the first thing is notice the needs around you. Look for them. Look for the needs around you. And that's what Jesus modeled. He looked out. He saw a need, he saw an injustice, and he acted. When Jesus sees an injustice, he wants us to do what we can to help. And while God might not work through us to give sight to a blind man, even though he totally could, like, that would be awesome. Even though we may not be the ones up there healing the blind or fixing the broken legs, or we can look out to the needs and injustice around us. When we see an injustice, we do what we can to help. And there's two things that I'm going to encourage you guys to do when you're looking out for the needs of others, right? So first, pray. Pray to God that he gives you the sight to see the needs of those around you, to see the injustice of the world around you, of the society around you, so that you're more willing to help. Because if you can't see it, then you obviously can't do anything about it. So pray to God that he shows you where unfairness and injustice has creeped into just everyday life for these people. And then pick one. Like, you don't have to solve world hunger, but if there's a kid that sits at your lunch table that just kind of seems lonely, start up a conversation with him. If you know the nursery downstairs needs volunteers, volunteer. Like, it's the little things like that, that one need that you recognize and know you have the power to do something about, Like just that one need, that's all it takes, is fulfilling that one thing that God has called you to do. So we're going to close in a word of prayer, go to our small groups. Just think about this question, okay? What is one need or injustice that I've noticed in the world around me? Think about that as we go to small group, as we go into this next week. I know a lot of you are probably going to be out for the summer if you're not already out after this week. So think about this summer, what's one need that I can help fill for those around me? All right.